What program am I speaking of, you may say? If you've never heard of gangstalking, it is just a new term for the counterintelligence program. Counterintelligence program, also COINTELPRO, and that is spelled COINTELPRO. Never heard of it before? Well, let me give you a summary. In the 1950s and the 1960s, the FBI, along with the CIA and their Operation Chaos, came up with the counterintelligence program as a racially motivated guerrilla-style warfare tactic against the progressive black movement. It was essentially war declared on the Israelite, which is the so-called Negro community. You probably see the black community, if you're a foreigner or maybe European descent, Hispanic, whatever, and you say, why is it that these people are in such disarray? Why are they marginalized? Why come they just can't seem to get it together? Well, it wasn't always that way. Post-slavery, blacks had a lot of success in the Harlem Renaissance era, a lot of inventors, a lot of artists, and even prior to that, you had the, just giving you a little history on what we're capable of doing just with sure nothing. 1921, you have the Tulsa or the Oklahoma Black Wall Street, where blacks created their own business, banks established their own communities, financing mortgages, and doing international trading. In 1921, the black community chose to go out to the territory of Oklahoma City, which was not at that time incorporated into the United States. Oklahoma was not a state, so therefore blacks were free to do what they wanted to do. When it was incorporated, of course, they used false propaganda, spreading of lies, rumors, in order to racially motivate warfare against the black community. Bombs were dropped by the United States government on the black community. Many were slaughtered, and it's a horrific story that America wants to sweep underneath the rug. It never stopped. In each era where there is progress amongst the Israelites, there is an agenda, not from the poor white people around you who can't hire you because they are working right beside you. You know what I mean? That's the reality of the situation. The reality is, in order to be racist and practice racism, you need power and the ability to influence someone's life in a negative way. So we're talking about the elites at a high level who have the military or financial substance in order to, affect other races in a negative way. That's what racism is. Now, can the other whites be prejudiced? Prejudice is just a state of ignorancy, meaning that you prejudge someone before you get to know the truths of them. And so, yes, poor whites can be prejudiced, and prejudice can negatively affect someone's life, but racism goes to the next level because it affects the entire group instead of a personal or individual life as a whole. And this can be done in various ways, redlining the unfair criminal justice system. With, by the way, go grab a book by Michelle Alexander, Dr. Michelle Alexander, called Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, and also a book by Dr. George DeGury called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And this will help you understand that this warfare against a variety of people at this point that we now call gangstalking is rooted in racism. Those who have investments or stakes at things at stake, their positions and power at stake by the Israelite community coming into knowledge of who they are, uniting and gaining sovereignty in any sort of progress, whether it be intellectual, spiritual, emotional, social, family structures, and things of that nature. So they're the ones who go over and beyond in order to continue to make sure that subsidized living become the dependability of the black woman, that the black man stays out of the home as the father, stays overly represented in the court and prison systems, and that the black child is never educated according to what is tangible to them. They never learned their history, so therefore they grew up never knowing who they are and being able to value oneself. Once you know your history and where you come from, then you have a sense of pride that and a standard that you can be motivated to uphold for the next generation. Hopefully I'm not speaking too long, but this is where the COINTELPRO Gangstalking program comes from. It comes from evil. Let's take it back to the Bible. For those of you who have read the book of Kings, then you know that Jezebel, she used the counterintelligence program. It means to offset that which is in motion, to make counterproductive measures against someone's progress. Psychological warfare, guerrilla warfare. No, not army tanks rolling down your hood, shooting down innocent men, women, and children per se, but the casualties and the decimation is just as effective and just as real. Stealth warfare involves psychological warfare, deceptions, and no-touch torture, lethal weaponry such as these New Age electromagnetic assaults that are being ran by agencies such as FBI, NSA, CIA, DOJ, Department of Defense, private security subcontractor corporations, which is big business at this point. Through the spreading of lies, rumors, and defamations, they're able, in issuing out wrongful, illegitimate court authorization, they're able to convince many different sectors from the private, public, and personal environment of your social atmosphere that you are indeed under investigation, that you are a possible terrorist, or you have terroristic violent tendencies, that you're an extremist, which isn't good for social integration. This is why ostracism is one of the characteristics of someone who's been gang-stalked, being isolated from society and social events. They will also convince everyone that you are mentally unstable, prostitutes, pedophiles, kidnappers, thieves, whatever they can label you as. And once they convince people by offering them the appropriate evidence to solidify the falsehood as a truth, they are able to convince or coerce American communities and citizens into joining repressive or repressive just means things that hold you back or hold you down. It is just a different variation of oppression. So when you hear repression, oppression, you know you're dealing with demonic spirits. A devaluer, a devil is someone who devalues, bring you down, so, or hold you back. So repression is to hold back, oppression is to hold down, and this is how you know it is indeed spiritual. It is spiritual warfare. But they incorporate them into these community policing programs where these people are asked to spy on you. They're asked to play undercover cops, so to speak, etc., while being, offered maybe having their records expunged, housing, cars, gift cards, and other forms of bribery or intimidation. This is the real pandemic here in America, and I'm just covering the surface. This do not include the biological warfare against the community. Now, if you're white and you're watching this, don't feel as if you're in the safety zone, because if you're poor, you're white, and as the scriptures say in the book of Revelations chapter 12, I don't have the exact verse on hand, but guess what? I'm going, your boy's going to look it up right here. So you know I'm not lying. Not just Israel is under attack by the serpent, but it goes on to say in verse 17, and the dragon was wroth. He was furious with Israel, which is personified as the woman here in this particular chapter. Personification is a writing style where they kind of use allegories and similes and parables in order to describe a much more deeper subject or ideal or group. Just a little lecture there on for anyone who's into the literary arts. And it goes on to say in verse 17, he was furious with the woman, or Israel, the black people of the transatlantic slave trade, right? According to the prophecies of Genesis chapter 13, verse 15, or maybe it's 15:13. Don't have time to look it up now. Continuing, and he went after the remnant of her seed. Now let's identify the remnant of her seed, who kept the commandments of the Most High Yah and have the testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach. If you're a believer, you're white, Mexican, Asian, really don't matter. Guess what? The enemy is attacking you too. He's going after Israel, but he's pretty much decimating anything in his past and anyone in his past who's reflective of the faith of Christ. Remember, the Antichrist spirit that is running this program amok is jealous of Christ. He exalted himself, as it is written in the book of Daniel chapter 11, against any that is called God or called of God, right? So this is what we're at odds against, the Antichrist gang-stalking program. And it's not just against the Israelite race. This isn't like a physical thing, it's spiritual. So if you're in the Yah race, if your bloodline, if you have the spiritual bloodline of Christ, then he's against you. He's going after the spiritual bloodline of Christ. Have you been engrafted into the family? Are you adopted into the royal family? It's just like mafias. If there's two families going against each other, they don't care if you're associated by adoption. You're considered an enemy, and on sight they're tummy gunning you, trying to tummy gun you down, and that's where we're at. But your boy MTAC have been doing heavy investigation. I've been hands-on, and I take advantage of all opportunities. Very interesting. You guys listen up here. They've tried some of everything. Lies, rumors, slander. I've been identified as a possible terrorist. You name it. A drug, poison, and even they've told people that I was an illegal immigrant working underneath a false name. Now, you do not get a Class A, I'm covering up my information here, but you do not get a Class A commercials. Can you see? Let me go to the light. You do not get a Class A commercials driver's license by being an illegal immigrant. That just don't happen. And of course, I can't really show it right here, but you just don't get that. Someone you'll be in court in no time. I have not seen any courts. You don't get bank cards issued in your name if you're, if you're an illegal immigrant. So, and you're working underneath a false name. I have my birth records, birth certificate, original fingerprinting from the day I was born, and I've been trying to get into court. Can't get into court. You know why? Because it's a huge civil settlement in my favor, and the enemy don't want you to win. He don't want you to come up off an attack that he launched against you, and much, much more. My family's been intimidated, fraudulent phone calls, and as of late, they've even thrown in honeypots. So the last situation, which no offense, they could have done a much better job. I was at the laundromat. They sent, I'm not even going to demean anyone, but they sent someone you knew probably was on public assistance, dealing with emotional and psychological issues, poverty, and much more, and definitely subsidized, which there's no problem. I grew up on food stamps, housing, all that stuff, and thankful that I was able to survive off of it, because we didn't have the means to survive otherwise. Nonetheless, moving on, came over. I said, all right, let me use this as an opportunity, because I noticed this person, had a tendency to, well, I'm not going to say that part. I forgot Gangstalkers actually watch my channel. Long story short, I was able to gather information on what kind of apps they use. They use something called WhatsApp. WhatsApp is how they communicate. They also have technology, and this is from the horse's mouth, from the Gangstalker's mouth. I've talked to a couple of them for voice mimicking, so they can actually call you and alter their voice, take a sound snippet of someone else's voice and convince you that you're talking to that person, which I was aware of that technology, that it was being hyper used in the Gangstalking program. What else? They didn't show me what group name it is, but I'm pretty sure there's a group name for the WhatsApp. Risk app is how they communicate to like the law enforcement, but the informants, people with like records, or maybe who's just trying to get added means to pay for their house, their car, their food, etc., they use WhatsApp. And this is information that I gain, and I'm going to continue to do my research. I'm going to continue to pass out flyers and make people aware of this. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to play dumb in order to catch a fool. Till next time, you guys stay woke, stay wise. If you're not woke, wake up so you too can get wise up to what's going on in the world. And until then, the boy MTAC has got to be his out.